We are live on Facebook.
Great, thank you. And we have all the attendees. Please change your names to show your first and last name if you haven't already. I think all the commission members have done so. Good morning, everybody. I want to call the meeting to order. And Haley, would you take roll, please?
Chair Fletcher,
Here.
Vice Chair Allegado,
Here.
Commissioner Maynard,
I'm here.
Commissioner Kaufman,
Here.
and Commissioner Keener, absent. We have 4 out of 5 commissioners present, so quorum is established.
Great, thank you, Haley. Commissioner Keener is excused on a family-related trip to the continent. We all wish her well. Approval of the minutes, agenda item number 3. Are there any comments on the minutes? None from McKenna. I don't have any. I thought they were very well done, and I used several of the links there to catch up on some great information, especially the greenhouse gas inventory that ResilientOahu.org maintains, the resiliency office. Alrighty. Haley, do we have, so I see one speaker is with us,
Chip,
Vivek Chandas.
I think you have to take a action on approving the minutes.
Oh, okay, yeah. So can we?
Motion to approve.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. The minutes are adopted. Thank you, everybody. And I just want to check that our 2 speakers are here. I see one. What I'm thinking of doing is switching the agenda around, which will take a vote of the commissioners. We have 2 speakers on the topic of urban heat. One is Vivek Chandas, who is here with us. Vivek, it's good to see you. Thank you for joining us. The other is Janie Bafishi from the New York City Mayor's office. She has a hard close at 10 o'clock. So I wanted to move the 2 speakers forward on the agenda. But I don't see Janie having shown up yet. Given that, I'd like to move Nicola next. Nicola, just raise your hand if that's okay with you. I don't want to surprise you. Okay, so commissioners, I'd like to move item number 5 on the agenda to follow item number 3, which is what we just did.
Motion to move the agenda item as chair suggests.
Thank you, Rosie. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so item number 5 will be next. And then I would also like to move items 6 and 7 to follow Nicola's report. So that would push addressing Dr. Tawn Keeney's testimony and letter to the commission to follow our guest speakers. So it'd be in the second half of our meeting. So if I may have a motion to move items 6 and 7 forward on the agenda.
Motion to move items 6 and 7. Oh, yeah, sorry, McKenna.
Just a quick comment and question. I just want to make sure that Dr. Keeney is able to stay, given that it was agendized earlier. I just want to ensure that he is planning to stay for the duration, if that's.
Dr.
No,
Keeney?
I'm very happy to do so. I would like to stay anyway, so thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dr. Keeney. I just wanted to make sure before we did that. So go ahead, Rosie.
Oh, motion, but thank you, McKenna, for checking in. That was very considerate. Yeah, so motion to amend the agenda per Chair Fletcher's suggestion.
All in favor? That motion is adopted. All right, so the agenda now will consist of Nicola Hedges' report next, followed by a presentation on mapping urban heat islands by Vivek Shandas, followed by a presentation on heat management strategies from New York City by Janie Bafiji. And then that would be followed by communications and correspondence from the public. All right. Thank you, everybody. So Nicola, the floor is yours.
Yes, good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners, members of the community. Aloha, my name is Nicola Hedge. I'm Deputy Director with the Office of Climate Change, Sustainability, and Resiliency. Really, really pleased to be here. This is my first in this role in particular, since Matt Gonzer, our Executive Director, is also out of town until next week. I just want to first start off, oh, Howard, I think we're getting some, there we go. First start off by extending a very warm mahalo to Commissioner Maynard for her more than 3 years of service and being willing to stand up as part of this inaugural set of climate commissioners and really help to set the bar really high for the engagement and advice that that you, Commissioner Maynard, have given the city and our decision makers and community throughout your 3 years of service. So just want to very warmly extend that from our office, and I'm sure there might be some additional discussion of that later. And also update folks on resolution 21-166, which I know Matt has updated folks, is referencing the appointment of Melanie Islam to the commission in this seat that will be vacant. It passed first reading at full council on the 11th of August, second reading at the Committee of Transportation, Sustainability and Health on the 24th, and we anticipate final reading and confirmation at the September 8th full council meeting, obviously pending confirmation when the agenda comes out. So we look forward to that moving forward also. Just in terms of some office updates, I know we are really thrilled also in terms of season of change to be welcoming some new AmeriCorps Vistas. We have, while 2 AmeriCorps Vistas recently completed their service with our food and energy programs, Mia and Holly, we have 5 new AmeriCorps Vistas that are joining our office and the Office of Economic Revitalization. Actually yesterday they joined. So they are, as we speak, getting oriented, and they continue to serve as part of the 20-odd Vista community that's serving within the city and county of Honolulu to build our capacity to really more thoughtfully, intentionally, and comprehensively address climate change from a variety of perspectives, and as it relates to the broader mission of AmeriCorps of capacity building and poverty alleviation. So I want to really extend a warm welcome to them. We also have one bittersweet announcement too, with the just wanting to take a moment of time to thank and honor our outgoing climate resilience and equity manager. She has been with the office for about 2 years, and again, similar to you all, she jumped in to serve as the first person in this new position, with the recognition, that as we move forward on climate, we really must ensure that it is with equity in mind, with affordability, with continuing to help community remain rooted and build community-based resilience. And so while she's heading over to the Big Island and thankfully going to stay working in this space. We are excited to announce an open position. Perhaps Haley, if she hasn't already, could put that link in the chat for anyone who might be interested in sharing the news of the open position. We're looking to fill that as soon as possible. Just in terms of some of our recent activities, I know in terms of our climate action plan, there's a lot going on. We continue to really coordinate with the leadership that's existing within other departments around emissions reduction from transportation, energy, and waste sectors. There's a number of things going on. I see if you haven't already, the Ward Avenue bike lane just opened today with a news announcement. We also kicked off a municipal working group around our fleet transition. So that's exciting to really make sure that we're rolling up our sleeves across agencies to really help make sure that we're comprehensively looking at this opportunity within our own fleet and be a better support for the broader community transition to electric vehicles. We've also recently kicked off a municipal energy and water benchmarking effort. We were able, through our energy service performance contracts, to already have benchmarked 40 municipal buildings almost that range in size, but now we're embarking on a comprehensive effort to ensure that per ordinance 2047, we are benchmarking or assessing the energy and water use on an annual basis of all municipal buildings above 10,000 square feet. So we're excited to do that. And again, as an effort to continue to better ensure that we're reducing the use from those buildings. And then we've been invited to the Transportation, Sustainability and Health Committee to also speak with them and learn more about how this effort might be expanded on a community basis. So looking at how we could work with stakeholders and move forward a community-wide energy and water benchmarking and transparency effort. So we look forward to that at a future forthcoming committee hearing. We're also moving forward rapidly, and I'll just two more things and I'll close up. I know there's plenty on the agenda. Through our climate adaptation strategy, we are kind of wrapping up a number of community events that the team has been doing, really to listen, get engagement in the plan and our Visions of Oahu effort. And we're also coordinating across agencies to try to solicit and organize and coordinate some additional building resilient infrastructure and community grants, BRIC grants through FEMA, as the grant amount for that program has again doubled, and we're looking to make sure that the city puts again its best foot forward and continues to be competitive for those funds. So with that, I'll wrap it up and really appreciate you all on the discussion today.
Questions, commissioners?
Sorry, Chip. Can I say something?
Yes.
I want to say that I really appreciated these very kind words about my service, and I want to stress that I would have been utterly unsuccessful if it hadn't been for this incredible team around me. It's been a true honor to have been part of the inaugural Climate Change Commission. I hope that we truly set the bar high, because that's what we need to do. And there is so much work to be done. And thank you for having the foresight to include somebody from my industry, the construction and design industry, because so much needs to happen. And I am excited beyond words that hopefully somebody else from this field will take my place. And I already, I guess, threatened and offered to her that I will be there in the background helping, because I think one one becomes a lifetime member of this group here, especially once having served. So I will not be in all the meetings, but I will definitely be there. And it's been an honor to be able to assist this group. So the thanks is on my side. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Bettina. I was going to save this for later, but I'll do it now. Thanks so much for joining us for the last several years, Bettina. You've been a fantastic commission member.
I'm gonna take a picture of this. Thank you. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much.
I'll do it later too, because I'm really proud of that heart. I think that's a really good heart.
It is. Thank you.
Nicola, thanks for those kind words for our departing fellow commissioner. So any questions for Nicola? I have a question regarding the brick grants. It was brought up at the last meeting that one reason we haven't been successful is because our building codes, I guess it is, aren't at the level that FEMA considered current, or not that they're not current, but at a high enough resiliency level that allowed us to be competitive in the brick competition. Do you have any comments about that, or any? Yeah,
Yeah,
go ahead.
Thanks, Chair Fletcher. From what I understand from our staff, Chris Cunningham, who's steeped in this, is that there has been some movement on the state building codes since the last year, and so there might be some additional points that we can get and qualify for. There is, I guess, a number of kind of points around building code effectiveness schedule, which is something that won't have been completed, but could be something that is considered in the future at the state and the county level in order to kind of take that next step and continue to be as competitive as possible. And it's really focused on both, the quality and enforcement of our building codes. So it's something to consider for the future. But we are certainly working hard to make the projects as competitive as possible.
Rosie?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on, it actually wasn't at our last meeting. It was an email that I shared with the office that had been passed through the state hazard mitigation form from HAIMA and their communication with FEMA. And so basically we learned through HAIMA that Hawaii is not competitive because of, precisely as Nicholas said, our current building codes, and as well as participation in this building code effectiveness grading schedule program. And because of our lack of being able to get within that program, we probably won't be competitive this year either, because every application automatically loses 40 technical points for this. So none of the 17 Hawaii projects that were competitive were funded last year. There were some that were not competitive, and we did receive funding in those categories, but we did not receive any in any of the competitive ones this year. So,
All right, thanks for that update. This is something we want to be sure and include in the forthcoming construction guidance. All right, any final comments or questions?
Yeah, this is Howard Wig, the energy codes guy. It turns out that this qualification is a county matter. There's apparently a 30-page document that each county needs to fill out to show that they are being fully compliant with the codes. And the Big Island is taking the lead on that and maybe able to provide guidance to the other counties. Thank you.
Thanks, Howard. Okay, let's move on to our two guest speakers. Janie, I understand you have a hard stop at 10 o'clock. So Vivek, if it's okay with you, do you mind if we go first with Janie? And great, thank you. So Janie Bafiji, Director of New York City's Mayor's Office of Climate and Resiliency, presentation on heat management strategies. Janie, the floor is yours, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. It's nice to be back. Let me share my screen. Top here.
That looks great. Thank you. Yep.
Okay, great. Well, I was asked to speak. I presented to the commission a few months ago on an kind of an overall high-level overview of New York City's climate resilience portfolio, and I was asked to come back to speak on heat resilience in particular. So, like I said, I'm happy to be back, and we'll do a bit of a deep dive here on what we're doing to manage extreme heat. Before I get into the details of our extreme heat work, I did want to just reorient the audience to the range of climate hazards that we're preparing for in New York City, ranging from coastal storms to sea level rise to precipitation, and then of course heat, which we're expecting the number of days above 90 degrees Fahrenheit to triple by the 2050s, according to our local climate projections. So we expect New York City to feel more like Birmingham, Alabama feels now in the next several decades. Just a bit more context on how we are thinking about extreme heat and how we're approaching it. Extreme heat is the deadliest natural hazard that we face in New York City. Densely populated areas can feel up to 22 degrees Fahrenheit hotter than surrounding areas. And so this is something that we're certainly concerned about. And this is of course due to the urban heat island effect. And indoor temperatures can be up to 20 degrees Fahrenheit hotter than outdoor conditions. In an average year, we see 13 heat stroke deaths, 450 heat-related emergency room visits, and 115 excess deaths from natural causes that are worsened by heat exposure. And we know that extreme heat impacts our most vulnerable residents, especially older adults, those with mental and other chronic health conditions, and poverty and poor housing quality can also amplify vulnerability to heat. Our heat investments are guided by our heat vulnerability index, which you see here on this slide. The heat vulnerability index takes into account physical indicators of extreme heat risk as well as social. So in terms of physical indicators of risk, we take into account density and lack of vegetation. And then in terms of social indicators of heat risk, we take into account race and poverty, and we also take into account AC prevalence. So the HVI ranks neighborhoods at risk for heat illness and heat-related mortality from a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the lowest and 5 being the highest. So what you can see here on this map is that the areas that light up in red are the ones that are most vulnerable to extreme heat risk. And this is where we're actually targeting our heat resiliency investments in New York City. The other thing we know about these neighborhoods is that it is low-income Black residents that face the greatest risks, and that has to do with lack of green space, lower access to air conditioning, and then underlying health disparities. And we also know that the City Council actually requires the city, as is a new mandate, to do an assessment of heat-related deaths. And death rates in these neighborhoods are higher than in other neighborhoods. So in terms of our heat resiliency work, our strategy is actually captured in this Cool Neighborhoods NYC report. Excuse me 1 second. I apologize. I am working from home and it's that time between camp ending and school starting. So things are a little chaotic. So I'm going to keep my video off and keep
No worries. No worries.
So our strategy is captured in this Cool Neighborhoods NYC report, which was released in 2017 and has evolved since then as well. But it's really centered around 4 goals. One is to make neighborhoods cooler, recognizing that the physical environment plays a key role in driving local temperatures. And I'll talk more about what's encompassed in each of these goals in just a second. The second is reaching our most vulnerable residents on extremely hot days. Third, we're increasing access to at-home cooling for the most vulnerable New Yorkers. And then finally, we're monitoring both indoor and outdoor temperatures to understand the risk as well as the impact of our interventions. So in terms of making neighborhoods cooler, we've in 2017, with the release of Cool Neighborhoods NYC, we made over $100 million investment in targeted tree planting in key neighborhoods. So the tree planting is actually taking sort of shape in 3 ways. One is street tree planting. And as you can see in this first row, just the impact that trees can have in terms of providing shading, especially in dense urban areas. The second is forest restoration. Believe it or not, New York City does have some urban forests. And so we're working to restore those to increase vegetation. And then finally, we're working to restore park trees. We have found through our temperature monitoring, and I'll get to temperature monitoring in just a second, that green space and vegetation is one of the most impactful strategies for cooling. In fact, we're finding that there's a several degrees difference between areas with vegetation and green space than areas without. Our second strategy to make neighborhoods cooler is to increase reflective surfaces across the city. And we're doing this mainly through a program that we call Cool Roofs. So we're essentially just coating rooftops white with a special reflective coating. The program has been in existence since 2009, and over 10 years, 2009 to 2019, we coated 10 million square feet of rooftops white. The program has really a couple of different benefits. One is that it reduces building energy usage. We find that especially on the top floors of buildings, multi-story buildings, the building energy usage goes down by as much as 30%. When you cluster these rooftops in close geographic proximity, we're also seeing that ambient temperatures can be reduced. And we also have structured this as a workforce development opportunity. And I said before, our programs are being targeted in the most heat vulnerable areas. So in 2018, 73% of cool roofs were installed in the 2 highest heat vulnerability tiers. And the dots on this map you can see are actually our cool roof coatings. And this is just an example of cool roofs, and you can see, I think the pictures just tell the story themselves. You can see how much of a difference these cool roofs coatings can make. This is on the rooftops of public housing buildings in Brooklyn. In terms of reaching the most vulnerable residents, we've actually piloted a program that we've been calling Be a Buddy in the most heat vulnerable neighborhoods. And through this program, the city partners with community-based organizations in the South Bronx, Northern Manhattan, and Central Brooklyn, which are our HVI 5 neighborhoods. And our goals here are to identify and regularly engage the most heat vulnerable residents, so mostly older adults, during what we call blue skies, during the rest of the year when it's not. We're working to develop really local neighborhood-based volunteer buddy networks where we can have volunteers check in on these vulnerable residents. And then we activate the networks during extreme heat and other emergencies. So for example, we noticed last year that we were activating the network for all kinds of COVID-19 related reasons, not just on extremely hot days. But in terms of reaching the most vulnerable residents, Be a Buddy is not the only way we're doing that. We've also been training home health aides and other community leaders to detect early signs of heat illness, so that when home health aides are making their rounds, they know to help their patients stay hydrated or access cool spaces, or if they have an air conditioner, be able to turn their air conditioner on to 78 degrees Fahrenheit, which is a way to stay safe without driving up your energy bill. As I mentioned at the top, one of our other goals is to increase access to in-home cooling. 2020 was a particularly unique year in terms of our in-home cooling needs. New York City actually installed over 74,000 air conditioners in the homes of low-income seniors because we knew that we needed to make sure there was a way for low-income seniors to stay safe without putting themselves at risk of COVID transmission. We also paired this with a petition to the state, which was successful, to provide energy subsidies to over 400,000 low-income families, because we knew that it didn't matter if you had an air conditioner if you couldn't afford to turn it on. But it's not sustainable for the city to be in the business of providing free air conditioners. So we're now turning our attention to reform the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program, which is a federal program run by the Department of Health and Human Services and then managed by the state to meet the new cooling needs that climate change presents. Here in New York State, we only allocate 2% of our overall HEAP allocation to cooling. The rest of the money, the majority of the rest of the funding goes to heating in the winter. So we're, and there are some unique barriers that that are present in the way the state manages the program that we are trying to change, just so that we can ensure that the program is fully utilized and is meeting the cooling needs, like I say, that we're seeing now. And then finally, as I mentioned before, we're monitoring temperature. So we've deployed kind of a first of its kind indoor and outdoor summer temperature monitoring network. And this was initiated in 2019. We had a break in 2020 due to the pandemic, but have deployed it again this year. And I think, you know, it will take some time to see the full outcome of this temperature monitoring. We're hoping that it will help us create some baseline data in the most heat vulnerable neighborhoods, but also assess the impact of our interventions. But we have found two initial findings, one which I already covered, which is that vegetation has the greatest impact on temperatures than any other intervention. But the second is quite striking, and it's that indoor temperatures can continue to increase for up to 16 hours after high temperatures are reached, as opposed to outdoor temperatures which peak in the afternoon. And this is, of course, creating a dangerous condition in households without air conditioners. I'll just mention that, you know, I often get asked about why we are focusing on air conditioning as a strategy, given that we're a climate resiliency office and air conditioners, of course, contribute to our carbon emissions. You know, we know that in New York City, there's already about an 80% of households already have air conditioners. So we're not talking about going from 0 to 100 or even going from 80 to 100. What we really are trying to do is, in that gap between 81 and 100, we're trying to identify those who most need air conditioners as a life-saving strategy and make sure that they have access to the in-home cooling that they need. So finally, beyond the goals that are captured in our Cool Neighborhood strategy, you know, we are also working to incorporate heat resiliency in the design and construction of all of the city's capital projects, meaning buildings and infrastructure projects going forward. So earlier this year, our city council mandated the use of our climate resiliency design guidelines, which take our local projections for extreme heat, increased precipitation, sea level rise, and storm surge, and provide guidance to the designers and engineers on how to incorporate those projections into the design and construction of capital projects. So we're piloting the guidelines on a diverse range of about 40 capital projects over the next few years. And then after that, the guidelines will be mandated for every capital project that New York City funds. And the guidelines do include strategies to reduce heat impacts and minimize contributions to heat pollution, including increasing reflective surfaces, increasing shading, selecting landscaping elements that maximize cooling, and reducing or capturing waste heat from AC and other mechanical systems. So that is a high-level overview, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Janie. That was fantastic. It was packed with exactly the sort of information we were hoping to get, actual direct actions that that are being taken. I want to let everybody know we've just been given a notice that Janie has been nominated by the White House to be one of 2 top deputies to NOAA's recently approved lead, top administrator Rick Spinrad. So Janie, congratulations on that, and I'm sure you're confirmation is going to go smoothly. It's an exciting future you have ahead of you there. Given how busy your life is and also your family duties that we know you're juggling right now, we really appreciate you spending some time with us. Considering that you do have to leave at 10, why don't we open up for questions for commissioners at this point, so that we make sure we have a chance to reflect on her presentation. So do any commissioners have any comments or questions? McKenna?
Thank you, Janie. That was a really great presentation. Just a lot happening and just really good work. And I appreciated your sort of addressing this issue of air conditioning, right? Because it can also undermine climate goals at the same time as such an important safety thing in the heat aspects. And so figuring out how to balance that. Anyways, I appreciated the way you explained it and thought it through. My question is around the Cool Roofs program. And you gave some examples in terms of public housing. And I'm wondering if you've also been engaging the private sector sort of existing building stock in that program.
Yeah, definitely, McKenna. It's a great question. So a couple of things for context. So one is that the city provides free coding. So essentially we cover the labor and the materials for any building that serves a social purpose. So any nonprofit, supportive housing, affordable housing, we'll cover for free. Cool roofs are actually required in the building code for any new construction or substantial rehabilitations, but it's sort of a tiered requirement. So, you know, our first preference is that wherever we can install green roofs, we do. Like solar panels is also another option. And then wherever the first two are not possible or infeasible, that's where cool roofs come in. I think that we're still, you know, there is a tax abatement program for green roofs that the state has created. And uptake has been slow, I think mostly because green roofs are quite expensive. And the tax abatement apparently doesn't provide enough of an incentive. So I think we are still grappling with, you know, what levers do we use to incentivize cool roofs where green roofs aren't possible without sort of taking our foot off the gas on green roofs, because they have, you know, multiple benefits, including benefits that cool roofs themselves won't be able to provide. So I think we're still figuring that out, but have some existing structures in place with which to build from.
Thank you.
Bettina, any questions?
This was a wonderful presentation. Thank you. I want to echo what McKenna said. I have two questions, and I'm hesitating because they might go a little bit too far into the weeds. Number one, the air conditioning. As it's getting hotter and hotter, I have read reports that the air conditioning systems that are in place are not able to handle the increased load, the higher temperatures. And do you see this as an additional problem already? And then number two, totally unrelated, trees. The change of the climate is triggering some trees to be not as healthy. So while we're planting on one hand, we are losing trees on the other. Do you see that in New York?
Those are good questions. The second question, I'm just not the right person to answer it. I am happy to get back to you, but and consult with our Parks Department. I haven't heard anything about heat impacting certain tree species or anything like that. But I'm not sure. It's a great question. So so apologies that I just don't have the answer. On the first question about the load, it's a really, really great question. And you know, I think a couple of things. You know, one is that it's really important that we that we do not think of any of these solutions as mutually exclusive. We really need to be advancing all of these solutions as a comprehensive strategy, because things like cool roofs and increasing vegetation and kind of, more boldly put, reimagining our public realm will really help to reduce the need for air conditioning. If we can actually make neighborhoods cooler and be thinking about passive cooling strategies and building design and things like that, we won't be as reliant on air conditioning as we are now. But with that said, we have found that we've had a couple of major heat waves this summer in New York City, and the city coordinates closely with the utility companies in the area. And when we were concerned about outages or overloading the grid, we did send notices out, just communication from the mayor's office that we needed to be more cognizant of our energy usage, and found that people heeded the concern, and behavior did change. And so, we're I think hopeful about. I think there's like more to explore on that kind of communications, but it did. I think it was helpful to see that behavior changed so quickly, and people were so responsive to that kind of communications. And we're I think taking those lessons and thinking about how we can apply them in the future.
That's awesome. I appreciate your response. Thank you.
Rosie, any questions?
No, I was just actually talking to McKenna that I had the same question about engaging the private sector.
Janie, the heat vulnerability index, is that a standardized index? It's not specific to New York City. Is that correct?
So we actually did create it with researchers at Columbia University to be specific to New York City, but I don't see why the data couldn't be, data from any locality could be plugged in. I think there might be sort of different factors that other communities may want to take into account based on local demographic information and things like that. For example, we don't specifically account for age, but I think that it provides a solid basis as a foundation for adapting it to other localities.
Great, thank you. And then were there any unexpected negative impacts from some of the actions you took? For instance, reflective surfaces and things like that you can share with us?
Not that we have come across yet. So, this program is still fairly new, but no, not yet. I mean, I think in fact, in terms of reflective surfaces, we're eager to continue to expand our focus on reflective surfaces and start experimenting with things like cool pavements, but we haven't quite gotten there yet.
Okay, great. Thank you. We're going to move on to our next speaker now. Thanks so much, Janie, and good luck with everything.
Thank you.
Vivek Chandas of Kappa Strategies. Thanks for joining us, and we're looking forward to your presentation.
Hi, great. Good to be here. It segues really well from Janie's presentation as well. I'm going to go ahead and just share a screen here and see if I can kind of set some context as to at least the remarks I'm hoping to make. Just to give you a little sense of my background, I'm where I have a day job as a professor at Portland State University, and I'm also advisor consultant in Kappa Strategies, which is a means of being able to be more nimble and engage municipalities around the country in addressing a lot of these climate adaptation questions, not necessarily climate mitigation questions. And so part of where I want to come maybe enter this conversation is just what we've come out of this summer in the Pacific Northwest, different than what you might be experiencing. But about 10 years ago, I was sitting at a commission meeting similar to this, except it was the Planning and Sustainability Commission for the city of Portland, Oregon. And I said to them in my testimony, 3 minutes that I had, that, you know, Portland is going to endure a heat wave that will be 3 days to 5 days long. Temperatures will be over 100 degrees, and we will see deaths occurring in X, Y, and Z neighborhoods, namely the ones that are noted here. Cully, Hazelwood, and Lentz neighborhoods were the ones that I'd identified about 10 years ago. And it wasn't entirely surprising when this heat dome event on between June 24th and June 28th kind of descended upon the Pacific Northwest, that broke not only records for the region, it also broke climate models. We didn't know the Earth could reveal itself quite in these intense, acute ways over such massive landscapes. And the 96 confirmed deaths, debatable as to whether there were more deaths. I would veer on the side that these codes are very hard, and 96 is what the Oregon medical examiner is willing to come forward with. But what we noticed with these deaths, much similar to what Janie had identified, are those that were older adults, those that were living in older buildings, primarily multifamily residential buildings, mobile homes, RV parks, and to a certain extent, single family residential as well. The typology here wasn't entirely surprising. The distribution of those impacts correlated remarkably well with the hottest areas of the city. And that was really what we were seeing over and over, is the places that the most number of people died are also the places where we were seeing some of the acute temperatures. In fact, when the heat dome came through the Pacific Northwest, I went out with my 11-year-old and just casually measured temperatures, both surface temperatures and air temperatures, and found that while the official temperature was 116, we were seeing temperatures in neighborhoods clocking in at about 124 Fahrenheit, where other neighborhoods were coming in at about 99 Fahrenheit. So we not only saw that these increases in the increase in the intensity of heat, not only raised the caliber of precarity among those most vulnerable in our region, it also extended the difference of temperature from neighborhood to neighborhood. That was something we had not seen before, and this measurements that we had done really brought this to light. And so part of where I would want to kind of continue with this conversation is that Honolulu and your group, and Dr. Fletcher, I'll sympathize with you in some ways because I serve as chair of a public commission here in the city as well. And I hear lots of testimonies and try to facilitate conversations about our urban forest, which is what I'm essentially chairing, our Urban Forestry Commission. And trying to bring kind of these conversations together to navigate an incredibly complex landscape of trying to use limited resources, trying to engage the experts, trying to then support and kind of mitigate impacts on vulnerable communities is really where we've been trying to focus a lot of our efforts. So these efforts are, I hope, not in vain, given the 96 plus people who've died, at least in this particular part of the country. This is not entirely surprising. I took some notes while Janie was speaking, and a few takeaways for me from the New York City example was really around the idea that, you know, this was a real focus on equity. There was mention of older adults, Black African-American adults, and trying to really invest strategically in specific locations. And so there's a spatial component to this that is not by coincidence. We've actually found that historic planning policies have disproportionately put communities, particularly put marginalized and disinvested communities at risk when it comes to climate change, as you all well, I think, would know. And what I think what we've learned from the Pacific Northwest is that a government agency cannot get its stuff together in time to be able to get in front of heat waves and various other climate-related disasters that come our way. And so relying on community-based organizations is a really big part of what I heard is happening in New York City, and I would really underscore that. And then the monitoring and basing the interventions on science is another piece that I think is underscores this conversation. And then finally, I have yet to see many of these heat mitigation plans emerge in cities at the municipal scale, yet we are seeing an increased frequency and intensity of heat waves emerge. And so that's where I think we really want to be moving some of these conversations. And so that said, we've been in the work of trying to conduct these campaigns, these heat assessment campaigns, because the first thing we want to do is understand where there's disproportionate impact from heat. And so by being able to show that one city block is different than another city block, we're hoping people will ask the question of why. And the moment people ask the question, why is there a difference between one city block and another city block, is where we start getting some really interesting historic planning decisions, as well as policies that have really exacerbated vulnerability, particularly among those who have historically been silent, socially isolated, folks who often are the victims of these heat waves. And so we've done about 50 of these campaigns now, where we've got another set going this year. It's in collaboration with NOAA, and it was exactly 2 years ago to the day, August 31st, 2019, that we engaged Matthew Gonzer, as well as others in Honolulu around this heat campaign. And it was a tremendous success. I will in a minute put the link for that campaign report in the chat here. Though I do want to just give all those, maybe some of you on this call who volunteered, participated on this August 31st event, just big kudos for the work that you did in kind of collecting what amounted to almost 100,000 individual temperature and humidity readings around Oahu, and certainly focused on Honolulu here. And there's some interactive maps you may have seen that have been generated from this campaign. We collect these data. We do a bunch of fancy math, mainly machine learning algorithms that help us describe the distribution of heat across the metro region here of Honolulu, and then going on. In fact, I will say that this was such a complex landscape for us to be doing this. We had to reassess our models. It actually broke one of our models that we run in doing this campaign in Honolulu. And we definitely feel very grateful for doing the work, as well as being able to revise our models so that they're more robust based on what we learned from this Honolulu campaign. This is an interactive map. I can also put the link up if it's helpful, and you can zoom in, zoom out, and look at different parts of the island, at least this part of the island where we mapped outcomes. And this, again, is kind of trying to base this in science, basing this in where is it the hottest. And just to go back to a question that Bettina asked Janie, the question of trees, that, where we've got some National Science Foundation funding to actually look at how trees are responding to heat. And in fact, we're seeing these evolutionarily adapted species that we have in the Pacific Northwest, like Douglas fir, big leaf maple, as well as red cedar, are compromised when the same tree in one of these hot pockets, if you will, one of these really dark red areas, if you take the same tree, essentially same age, same structure, and see it in a cooler part of the region, we see large disparities in the amount of water moving through the column. We see much earlier senescence, meaning much earlier loss of leaves. We start seeing lots of stress that the trees actually endure as they are in some of these hot areas. So while trees and green space are one of the biggest kind of contributors to ameliorating the temperatures, they also get stressed, as you all probably well know. And we're able to better dial in which trees are getting more stressed and which ones aren't. And so that these maps, while they're helpful for identifying social vulnerability, they're also been helpful for identifying ecological vulnerability in our landscapes. And we're moving into the area of getting at infrastructure vulnerability. Because if you might remember from the maps of Portland, what I did was I actually got addresses of every single person who died during the heat wave, went to their place where they died, and was able to assess what was happening in the landscape. And in many cases, these folks had an AC, were running it, and the AC broke. Within the second day of the heat wave, the AC broke, and then they were left with these old AC units that wasn't working, and they weren't even able to keep the inside temperatures cool, because many of these RV homes, their insulation is like less than an inch thick and very porous. And that's where we're seeing some of these most vulnerable impacts from this heat wave. So So you have all of that kind of material. Where I would encourage you to kind of maybe think a little bit, and what I wanted to maybe plant a seed with you today is to think about the next steps. Like, what might be a way for you to move into the next agenda when it comes to heat mitigation planning? And this is towards the idea of plan development. We've done for communities like these jurisdictional scans where we've looked at places around the world, identifying what they're doing, like the example you saw in New York City, and assembled those into kind of a systematic report where you're able to kind of pick and choose what might work, what might not work, depending on the context you're working with. We've done these capacity assessments for seeing, could you move forward on a white roof program like New York City has, or could you move forward on a massive green infrastructure program? Like, what are the capacities that might be available? And then we've also worked with communities to develop these knowledge assessments of, are potentially some communities more vulnerable than others, and when it comes to heat or generally climate-induced hazards, are there ways in which knowledge can be disseminated? And the second piece of what New York City example that Janie brought up was community engagement. Like, how do we know what the process is and the means by which we can engage particular communities? And a knowledge assessment can help us do that. And then finally, developing resources. That has a lot to do with, how do you kind of not only build on the assets you have now, but how do you potentially gain additional resources to do that? We've worked with a group in Jackson, Mississippi, along with about a handful of other cities, to essentially develop projects. Like in Jackson, it's called Greener, Cleaner Jackson, Mississippi. And the idea is to really think about centering green infrastructure in and around the city, as well as bringing back the economic development of the city through those green infrastructure programs. And so we've gotten pretty deep in that tier 4 side of things. And finally, for a plan, tier 4 is where we kind of would move for developing a plan for. We have a little brochure I'm happy to send you that that has additional information for each of these. And I don't want to go through each of these. There's a lot of text here, but what each of these would essentially enable you to do. So part of where I'm trying to move the needle on this, and so that I can sleep at night, is really not only volunteering more of my time than I care to admit through commissions and things like that, but also trying to use these opportunities to be a little bit more nimble through this through CAPA in this case, to be able to support communities in their place and being able to grow resources so that they can actually get in front of some of these increasing intensity and frequency of heat waves. So I'm happy to send this to you, happy to kind of get you more info on that. And I'll stop there for now, leave my contact info and stop sharing my screen. Happy to take questions, comments, other things that might be helpful.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much. And thank you for your advocacy. This is a huge problem. Unfortunately, it takes tragic events like happened earlier this summer, not only where you are, but in Turkey and Greece, and in fact, across the whole Northern Hemisphere this summer, to get the attention of so many of our leaders who otherwise really are dominated by the tyranny of the urgent things that pass their desk every day, and they fail to pay attention to these events until they occur. I've been putting up in the chat here a number of references that I've come across over the past couple of months in researching this subject. And we also, a little later, I will introduce our new graduate assistant. And Ryan has been working over the last 2 weeks, gathering information on cities' efforts around the world to deal with this issue of urban heat. And commissioners, I'm hoping to be able to present you with a draft of a white paper with guidelines on this issue of managing urban heat. Questions for Dr. Shondas. McKenna.
Sure. Actually, I would like to ask a follow-up question. It's really nice to see you, Vivek. We see each other at conferences periodically.
Oh.
But I would actually like to ask a follow-up question of Deputy Director Hedge, if she is, I know she's still here, but I'm wondering, we had gotten the update from Director Gonzer when you had been here, Vivek, to do the to do the Oahu study. And I'm just wondering to what extent you've been able to operationalize that data for decision-making purposes at CCSR, Nicola?
Hi, aloha. Yes, and thank you for this focused conversation on this and for your partnership, Vivek, in helping to make these assets possible. You know, I have to admit, we are. I think there's a lot more opportunity to continue to implement and operationalize, you know, this work. I think it continues to have insight into how we look at our codes, how we continue to move forward things in our climate action plan around shade, trees, canopy, both the built and natural environment. There's a number of ways that we are working on this, but I think I can probably get a more focused response from one of our coastal and water program managers and share it with the commission either later in the meeting or at a next meeting, because I think there's a lot more opportunity, and we continue to welcome the insight and guidance from you all in terms of what could be the most impactful ways to move some of these next steps forward, because there are quite so many opportunities.
Oh, thanks, Nicola. Sorry, I know I put you on the spot, and I guess that'd be great to follow up, because I think, as Chip mentioned, he's working on developing this white paper with Ryan's help, and it would be great to sort of know how we can best target it to be really helpful to you guys.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to put an exclamation point on Dr. Shondis's realization that today is I think it's the second anniversary, Vivek, is it, of the hottest day in the history of Honolulu, as a recorded history in Honolulu. The day you guys took your measurements was the record-setting hottest day.
That's interesting. I'm looking at the report right now. Looks like it's about 109 was the heat index that we picked up on that day. It was about a 22-degree Fahrenheit difference in that one period in the afternoon from one area to the other. Amazing.
Another important thing about Hawaii is that that heat wave and a previous one were developed because of a marine heat wave, not an atmospheric heat dome. So our heat has at least in that case, can have a fundamentally different physical source, physical cause. Bettina, comments, questions?
Thank you for fantastic report. Your passion is quite contagious, although you're preaching to the choir a little bit. Thank you for answering the question about the trees. And my accent gives it away. I do have roots in Europe, and it is absolutely heartbreaking for me to see how whole forests die where I grew up because they cannot handle the changing weather pattern, and it's quite terrible. So as Chip pointed out, we're all in this together, the whole world. So it makes sense to look at the big picture, and it was very interesting to hear the information on the trees. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Rosie, comments or questions?
Yeah, I had two comments, thanks. One was a follow-up from McKenna's question about operationalizing this information. So maybe it's directed toward Nicola, which is, are these strategies, is there an intention to have an independent heat plan, or will this be incorporated into the climate adaptation strategy, where is it going to live, do you think?
Yeah, no, great question. I think potentially in both places at this point. It is absolutely something, one of the major stressors of the 5 that we're looking at as part of the climate adaptation strategy. So, I know a lot of the community outreach that the team has been doing. They continue to both hear about this and seek input from the public about kind of lived experience, and then working with consultants, ICF, there's some targeted look at some case studies around heat and its application in relation to community and city infrastructure as well. So I think this is something that will continue to evolve with some specific applications in the climate adaptation strategy. That said, that will be fairly high level. So I think that there is, opportunities to move beyond and see some of the kind of really focused transformative efforts that we've seen in New York and in other places, specifically around heat and certainly with its application to community members as it relates to cooling zones or infrastructure and the community more broadly. So it should be both and we'll look forward to updating the commission on how it's specifically evolving as the climate adaptation strategy moves into its next steps.
Thank you.
Thank you. I was just going through one of the links that Nicola provided us to the Oahu Heat Vulnerability Map Series. It looks like we have moved fairly far along in terms of looking at the various social indices that would position a community as being more vulnerable, more exposed to heat stress. I see mapped poverty status, unemployment rate, disability, and other layers here. So it seems like we're pretty well positioned to develop a model similar to the heat vulnerability index that New York City uses. I think we'll take a look at that and do some interviews with folks in your office and elsewhere in the city, and perhaps make some suggestions in the next guidance paper with regard to what are the next steps, where can we push this already existing work forward. And Dr. Shamdas, I hope you'll continue to be available to assist us in this.
Absolutely, and I hope you'll return the favor, because I'm trying to get a commission similar to this set up in our little space over here, and it's really great to hear that you are kind of working together as a community to kind of identify the resources needed, the kind of conversation that needs to keep going. And I would love to hear from you about how that is all working and kind of the mechanics of setting something like that up. That'd be wonderful. I think we need more of these types of conversations to be had locally.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for sticking with us, Dr. Shamdas. Why don't we open it up for public questions? Haley, if you would help me with this. And if anybody in attendance from the public has any questions or comments, maybe you would turn your video on or put a hand up.
Yeah, this is Howard Wigg again. 2 comments. I sit on a couple of committees of the Cool Roof Rating Council, and we're in the process of establishing the Cool Wall Rating Council, and that is projected to save as much energy and AC load as is the cool roofs. Number 2, we're updating the Urban Heat Island Effect brochure with the strategy of getting it out to as wide an audience as possible so that more and more people become aware of the urban heat island effect. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you for that. Any other comments? All right. Well, Dr. Shondas, again, thank you so much for your time and your generosity. Let's see where we are. Let's see. So I think next on the agenda is correspondence from the public. Dr. Ton Keeney provided a letter and a copy of a guidance paper that he had recently written. Ton, we're going to ask McKenna Kaufman, Commissioner Kaufman, to respond. But prior to that, before that, would you like to just briefly introduce this topic? And again, I want to ask you to limit your comments and keep them brief. Please.
Real quickly, Chip, there was a comment that came in the chat about the prior agenda item. I think it came in right as you were transitioning.
Right, from
Anyway,
Walter Billingsley. There was discussion of green roofs and cool roofs, but I would also want to hear more about PV on roofs to power AC requirements. Okay, thank you for that comment, Walter. Dr. Keeney?
Yes, well, I have been a physician over in Honokaa. I retired several years ago, and I've been working with 350 Hawaii and the Democratic Party Environmental Caucus. I did a study, it was a casual study about a year ago, concluding that the greenhouse gas emissions from air transport of visitors to Hawaii in 2019 was 18 million tons carbon dioxide equivalents. And with a 10 million visitor, with 10 million visitors that year, this computes that the average round trip of visitors was associated with 1.8 tons greenhouse gas emissions. You know, I am of the opinion that these are numbers which, even though they seem real, you know, after researching this, these numbers are realistic to me. But I think these are numbers that probably escape the public consciousness and even escape the leaders' consciousness, leadership. And I think it is important that these kinds of numbers actually be available to people who are thinking about what can we do in terms of mitigation of the climate impacts that we're having on through our social structures. And you know, I think the important things that I have discovered recently in 2021, there were two important reports that were released that have substantiated the method that I used in arriving at those numbers of 18 million tons. The first was the probably the most definitive work in the scientific literature on aviation transport emissions. And that was a paper by Lee et al. In the journal Atmospheric Environment. And his statement is CO2 warming equivalent emissions based on global warming potentials, the GWP method, indicate that aviation emissions are currently warming the climate at approximately 3 times the rate of that associated with the aviation CO2 emissions alone. And then in a previous communication with your commission, it was pointed out to me that there would be a report that was coming available this year called the Short-Lived Climate Forcers Report. And that was actually presented in the 6th assessment report by the IPCC several weeks ago. And that report, well, just a statement. They're referring to the Lee paper, again, as being kind of the Lee's paper being the definitive study on aviation emissions. The IPCC states their study consists of an updated comprehensive assessment of aviation climate forcing based on a large number of studies and the most recent air traffic and fuel use data sets available, new calculations, and the normalization of values from published modeling studies, and combining the resulting best estimates in a Monte Carlo analysis. Well, they go on to conclude that Lee's analysis, again, going back to that the global warming effect from the aviation emissions should be approximately 3 times that of aviation, of the carbon dioxide equivalents alone. Well, the important issue, I think, is that if there are 18 million tons of emissions from air transport, it's also known that the electricity generation and oil refining in Hawaii is 7.8 million tons as a total, and ground transportation is 4 million tons. I think all of these things go together to point out that there needs to be a study done of the aviation, of the air transport of visitors and how much greenhouse gas emissions are resulting from that.
Thank you, Dr. Tini.
Thank you.
Tini. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Commissioner Kaufman?
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Keeney, for your correspondence. I mean, I think I absolutely agree you're raising this important point that the contrails from aviation emissions haven't yet been dealt with within greenhouse gas inventory protocols. And I think we discussed that in the last commission meeting related to the report. I actually didn't realize the methodology report was released. I thought that was anyways, so you just educated me on something. I have to go find it. I thought it wasn't yet prepared, that it was still in a series of working group meetings.
It came out with the 6th assessment report.
Oh, awesome. Okay, I need to go find that and read it carefully. So that, so I think that this question of, how do we think about aviation emissions in its totality is extremely important, and absolutely current inventory protocols do not do that, right? They take global warming potential based on the fuel consumption and the fuel burning without thinking about altitude and contrails and things like that, right? So there's other forcings that are really important, which you mentioned the Lee et al. Article from Atmospheric Environment. And so I wanted to, I last night, I sketched up just sort of a calculation of sort of where the state inventory is, which I should say I worked on, but I didn't work on the inventory. I worked on the projection side, right? Where the state inventory is relative to the methodology that you put forth in your submission to us, just to try to reconcile some of these numbers. So I have an Excel sheet, if I can share my screen. Everyone bear with me, walking through some numbers. Okay, so for 2017, the domestic aviation and international aviation numbers within the state inventory are given here, 3.46 and 1.23. And this is based on the EIA state energy databases, the EIA SEDS databases, right? So these are based on fuel reporting, which is required by law. So it's based on actual fuels purchased and refueled in Hawaii, right? And I think a major distinction between what you sort of put forward in yours and this is you're, I think, very interested, rightly so, in this idea of more of like, what is a visitor footprint, right? Whereas this is a, maybe not entirely, a limited sort of what is a greenhouse gas inventory. And I only say limited because of this question of additional radiative forcing is not part of the methodology, right? So let's move to kind of thinking about this greenhouse gas inventory, to trying to translate that into what is a visitor footprint. And so the first thing is that there's this distinction between one-way trips and two-way trips, right? The concept of an inventory is that you could theoretically add them together to get an aggregate emissions between jurisdictions. So you don't want double counting embedded in the inventory, which is why one-way trips are reported in the inventory. But it's very easy to double that and make it a round trip, right? And that gives you a more comprehensive view of a footprint. So taking these numbers and simply multiplying them by 2 takes you from the one-way per IPCC inventory guidelines to round trip, right? And here we then get 9 million metric tons for total. There's some adjustments that need to be made, and I just made some back of the envelope adjustments here to try to get a little insight into this. So if you take the total, this aviation fuel footprint in its global warming potential as a round trip, but then you also need to think about, well, what is passengers and what is cargo, right? Because your question seems to be, well, what is the visitor footprint? So I took a methodology that actually is online within the technical appendix of the CAP, and it's based on DBED data on passenger and cargo trips. And then we make some assumptions about them traveling within similar kinds of crafts. And once you do that, you get a ratio of about 84%. So most of it's passengers, right? And arguably, maybe you shouldn't be applying 84% equally to domestic and international travel. I don't, just for argument's sake, I just applied it equally to both, but you could play with that to get it more precise. And then from that, once you have passenger round trip million metric tons, then you can think about what of those passenger round trip million metric tons are visitors, right? So here, similarly, this how I did this is based, I took from the technical appendix of the Climate Action Plan, so you can find it there. But it's based on the statewide visitor arrivals numbers over the total passenger traveling to and from Hawaii, which is DBED data collected within the DBED data book. And if you do that, it's about 86% are visitors. I did this 2 different ways. From the state input output table 2017 ratio of expenditures, it was closer to 72%. So, there might be different ways to slice it, but they're all in the same ballpark. So it's still illustrative. Okay, so this gives us 6.87 million metric tons. And then you get into this really, really important question with, this isn't adequate, right? Which I think is your main point, that there's other radiative forcings and we need to take that into account. Everybody does in terms of the impact of aviation on global warming. So in the original documentation you sent us, you were relying on the My Climate carbon offset calculator. I dug through some of their methodologies, and they're relying on a study by John Bluth and Mealy 2018, which it was a review article, seemed really interesting and really good. And their rule of thumb was 2, right? So the Lee et al. Is 3. And so really the question is, what is this, right? And it is important to sort of take this as a rule of thumb, because the research on it also just says it's like really, really specific to all kinds of things in terms of, this is getting more into Chip's earth science area, but all kinds of things in terms of weather, in terms of the altitude of the flights, et cetera, et cetera. But as a rule of thumb, the My Climate took 2, which seems absolutely reasonable. There may be differences, but anyways. So once you take this number and multiply by 2, this is where you get 13.5. So I'm hoping this is like an illustrative response to your question, right? Of like, what is this visitor footprint? And if you multiply this by 3 per Lee et al. Study, you're going to get a much larger number, right? And I think that we are, going to be thinking about, well, how do all aviation should be multiplied by this larger global warming potential, not just the visitor portion of it, right? All of the portions of it, although the visitor portion of it, as you see, are approximately 70% of the total. I do want to caveat what I did here, right? As this isn't it's a little bit apples and oranges. This is more of a footprinting. And also, I think that it's kind of fair to call it a footprinting, but got to be a little careful with sort of like exacting out one type from another, because actually, like, you know, visitor travel and resident travel and number of residents relative to number of visitors are all very related, right? And so in terms of actual incidents, it's a lot more complicated than this very simple back of the envelope I did. Anyways, sorry, that was a lot of detail, but given we've had this correspondence for a while, I thought I should just take a stab at it.
Thank you, McKenna. That was actually a wonderful lesson, and I appreciate so much your effort there. I wonder if there, you know, one part of my concerns was, of course, satisfying my own curiosity. But of course, I think the bigger issue is how do we actually inform the public and leadership about what the magnitude of these visitor emissions are? I think that's important, of course, in the big picture, but I'm also have a concern, and one reason why I was pushing kind of aggressively, particularly just recently, you know, this actually, this report from on the short-lived climate forcers only came out 2 weeks ago, but I think my motivation is partially because my feeling is that that we need to act fairly quickly on this, and that's because in this next session of legislature, I'm sure the issue of green fee is going to be coming up. And in fact, I think there's a general impression that probably a green fee will be passed in this next legislature. And I think that actually is the only mechanism that is available on a practical level for modulation of the number of visitors that, well, for government at least, modulation of the number of visitors that arrive here. And consequently, I was hoping that possibly a study like you've just done, and I'm so impressed that you know, you took the initiative to do this. But I was just hoping that some sort of a study like that could in some way, with kind of the official stamp of the Honolulu Climate Commission, could be reported to the public and to legislature to assist them, particularly for their deliberations in regards to green fee coming up in this next session.
Well, so I want to acknowledge that Henry Curtis has put into the chat that tourism footprint includes car rentals use, and I would absolutely agree, right? So I'd put in car rentals use, any electricity consumed while staying in accommodations, right? So this, to get a full visitor footprint, it's much larger. This is a visitor footprint of aviation alone, right? And I think that the question you're raising, Dr. Keeney, is an important one, but I would say, you know, what I did here is way too simplistic, right? And in order to actually get at this question of like, would an increase in the green fee via the TAT, which is actually now, you know, counties have been authorized to make their own, you know, own use of TAT as well from last legislative session. You know, it is, what does that do to visitor arrivals, visitor spending, and then how it affects greenhouse gas emissions going through, right? If you look at the state carbon tax analysis that myself and others from the university completed last year, it gives some insight into how sensitive or actually not sensitive visitor arrivals are to changes in things like, you know, prices, right? So TAT, but also the, I can send you a piece from Carl Bonham and Peter Fulicki where they looked historically to understand the statistical relationship between visitor arrivals and airfare, airline prices, and it's very insensitive. So anyways, it definitely does reduce, you could increase prices and it would reduce arrivals if that was the goal, but not on a 1-for-1 kind of basis, right? Not a percentage to percentage, it's much, much lower than that.
I see. Such a good explanation. I appreciate very much your thoughtfulness about this and your comprehension of the big picture involved. Wow. And I'd like to compliment the entire Honolulu Climate Change Commission. Watching the previous presentations, it just amazes me what a complex field you're dealing with. I've been focused on visitor arrivals, and you get one pointed and it all seems so obvious. This is what we need to do, but you're dealing with such a complex environment of issues. So I appreciate very much.
Thank you, Dr. Keeney. Thanks so much, McKenna. Dr. Keeney and everybody, I want to note that Dr. Kaufman's presentation will be memorialized in our minutes, and we'll be voting on the minutes at the next meeting. So it does represent a public record that you can refer to in the future.
Thank you.
Yeah. I also just wanted to say, with regard to the visitor issue, it is such a huge issue. I think everybody is feeling like we're just getting overwhelmed at times. Correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I thought I read recently that the increase to almost 11 million visitors in 2019 did not cause an increase in hotel beds, or at least the difference in hotel beds from a previous year where there were something like 6 or 7 million visitors up to the 10.9 million visitors was largely there was a minor increase in hotel rooms used, and most of that increase was in Airbnb and vacation rentals. And so that strikes me as the first realistic mechanism by which the numbers of visitors can be managed. That is, managing the number of illegal vacation rentals. And I do want to acknowledge that that has become an important source of income for a number of families, for a number of people. So it's not, necessarily a linear management solution here. I think we need to make sure that if we start coming down hard on illegal vacation rentals, that we acknowledge that by allowing them to have proliferated over the course of over a decade, there's a certain amount of assumption that's gone into the folks that are engaging in that activity. Commissioner Allegado.
Just wanted to add some additional thoughts to what you just said, and then maybe open it up more broadly a little bit. So first, I think in order for us to have a true appreciation of the economic impact, we need to understand whether or not the owners of those illegal vacation rentals are residents of these islands, or whether or not they represent other second homes for outside residents. So those incomes might not necessarily be staying in state. I think we also have to recognize that by turning them to tourist dollars, that dramatically decreases the standing stock of rentals for Hawaii residents, driving more Hawaii residents who have lineal connections to these lands to move away. So I think that it is an extremely complex issue, and yeah, we do need to really open that up. I don't necessarily think those particular issues are within the domain of this commission, but I did want to bring up the fact that we have been kind of dabbling a little bit in trying to understand these, and perhaps what we can do is to think about, if we were to think about some kind of tourism guidance document, what might that look like, and what might be within our domain of calculating different things, not only greenhouse gases, but maybe water use as well. Yeah, I guess that's what I wanted to put on the table was, trying to be responsive to what Dr. Keeney said, is some kind of more formalized document. What would be within our realm of possibility as a commission?
Those are great comments. And I see this issue as mapping strongly onto questions of sustainability in an island setting and resilience in an island setting. I'll use the word burden of dealing with a much larger population in the case of a extreme weather event here, larger population because of the existence of a large number of visitors. And we saw that with Hurricane Iniki on the island of Kauai. That was a major issue there. Comments? Questions? All right. Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Keeney.
Thank you. I very much appreciate it. Thank you.
So next on the agenda is an update on the climate change and construction industry guidance document. Commissioner Maynard, I think we both have an update from Commissioner Keener. Would you like to provide that? I'm happy to as well.
This is my last meeting, and I'd love to do this because I am a bit saddened that we were not able to complete this paper before the end of my term, and it was even a bit of a extended term, which makes it particularly sad. But I am happy for the reasons. We have received so much, quite frankly, overwhelming feedback that needs to be addressed, that we want to do this right. There's a lot of comments, and they are much appreciated. There is a lot of thought that has gone into this paper, and we want to do it justice. We are incredibly fortunate that Dr. Wendy Meguro, an associate professor with the School of Architecture and also a Sea Grant appointee, has gotten funding from the Hawaii Natural Energy Institute and expressed interest to complete the paper, kind of take it over the finish line. And what she will be doing is provide research in support of the points in the document. Particular revisions will focus on the implementation of strategies to align it with the city's climate action plan, which had been published after the paper was already somewhat outlined. And we all agree that it is important to be aligned with papers such as that. There will also be a bit of additional focus on opportunities for education and training. I think this will be helpful. And we will expand on examples of how other cities or states are implementing their approaches. So there are examples of what others are doing. This is something that many have requested, so we're following that. So those are the main points, and like I said, I will be here. I'm excited that this paper is in its final stages, and I look forward to it being done. And a lot of credit goes to everybody on this commission here for their tireless support frankly, which we needed for what, a year and a half on this paper. And for Wendy, I don't think she is on this call, but for her stepping up and saying she is adding an additional component to this paper, which I think will make it quite terrific. So that is the update. Thank you.
Thank you, Bettina. Yeah, we're looking forward to this paper really being something that will be useful, that we can all be proud of, and that will have a long life. So, public input for matters not on the agenda. Do we have any public input? All right. Howard,
Chip,
yeah.
Chip, this is Howard Wigg again. I host a program on Think Tech Hawaii called Code Green, as in green building codes. And I'm always on the lookout for guests if anybody wants to join me and talk about a specific related topic here. I would be very glad to accommodate them down the road. Thank you.
Thanks, Howard. Think Tech Hawaii, Code Green with Howard Wigg. Our tentative next meeting date I have as September 16th from 9 to 11 a.m. We have, thank you, McKenna, for the confirmation. We have Scott Glenn on the agenda as a visiting speaker. And I would also like to take this time to introduce our new graduate assistant, funded by a grant to Dr. McKenna Kaufman from the Healy Foundation. Ryan Ringett has just unveiled himself. Hello, Ryan. Ryan's, as I mentioned earlier, been working on researching urban heat adaptation actions. And Ryan is currently pursuing a master's in urban and regional planning at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. He has a bachelor's of science in biological engineering from UH Manoa and an economics minor. Ryan has been a real pleasure to work with so far, and I'm looking forward to his partnership throughout the year. So there is Ryan. And thanks, Ryan. Any other announcements from anybody? Actually, here's an announcement. Hawaii Environmental Change Agents, Saturday, September 18th from 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. Senator Mike Gabbard, Representative Nicole Lowen, and Representative David Tarnas will have a free public online event for discussing priorities for the 2022 legislative session. This was emailed to me. I'm not sure how to, actually, Nicola or Haley or somebody, maybe you could put the link to this in the chat real quickly for the public to access.
Yes, I think Haley has it. She can pop it in if possible.
Okay. Now this is partnered with Surfrider Foundation, Nature Conservancy, Faith Action, Climate Reality Project, and a number of others. So this looks like it'll be an important event on Saturday, September 18th. All right, well, we've worked our way through the agenda, and we're ready to end the meeting. May I have a motion?
Motion to adjourn, and also just want to thank you again, Bettina. It was wonderful working with you on this.
Yeah, Bettina, thank you so much.
Oh, you guys are awesome. Thank you. Thank you very, very much. I'll be around. You won't be able to get completely rid of me. Oh,
Good.
thank you, Nancy.
We know where to find you.
Yes.
Can we get a second on the motion and can we get a vote to adjourn?
Second the motion, and I also want to thank Bettina for all of your time and energy and just the wonderful spirit that you bring to the commission. We're gonna miss you a lot.
Oh, make me sad. Thank you, Rosie. Thank you.
Thank you,
all.
Bettina. And with that, all in favor of adjourning the commission meeting, please say aye.
Hi.
Bye.
Right, we are adjourned.
everyone.
Thank